You remember modalities are visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory,
so
and
let's see
gustatory.
2 examples.
And on
you
top
have to
of
be
that,
very
we have
careful.
our self-talk,
very,
which is
very
auditory
careful.
digital.
You can't just
And the submodalities are all subsets
excitingly
of
about
those
the thing without
So, for
realizing
instance,
what
if you
it
make
is
a
that you're
picture
doing.
in your mind,
Many parents want their children to eat broccoli.
that picture will contain
So they dislike the kids
certain
dislike
characteristics.
and in
It
their
will
full
have certain
intentions,
brightness,
the parents
a
go,
certain
no,
color, or maybe no color. It has a certain distance from
First of
you
all,
in
that's
your
out of ecology.
mind, on your inner
Because
screen.
if the kid says
it has
no,
a certain
maybe
location.
the
It could
kid's
be up to the
body
right, left, in the middle.
knows
It could be far away or
that
close to you.
it cannot
And also
tolerate
those
broccoli.
brightness, color, distance, and location
Broccoli is just an
are
example.
examples
But if you
of
force
what
the
we
kid
call
to eat something their
submodalities.
bodies naturally don't want,
Submodalities
you
are
might
extremely
end up with an
powerful in the short
allergic
term
reaction as bad
because
as
they
an
make
anaphylactic
changes
shock.
quickly and assist us to change what
So you
happens
see,
to
you need
us
to think
inside
very,
our brain.
very carefully.
Stop
Now
for a
let's
moment.
talk
now.
about adult people.
Remember
This is
a
another
time
question
when
we
you
get
were
in the training.
totally motivated.
I dislike person
Why don't you
X,
just go back to the
and
time
I
and remember a
don't think I should
specific
dislike
time when you
them.
were totally motivated? It
Therefore, I
doesn't
wanna
matter.
like
It could
them.
be
Can I
in
do
business,
mapping
could be
across, or
personal
like to
relationships,
dislike,
could be
to
in any
kind of
area
force
where
myself
you
to
want.
like this person.
Just remember that
By
time
the way, that's again
when you
a
were
question
totally
of ecology.
motivated. And
maybe
remember,
that person deserves to be disliked.
as you remember that time,
maybe that person
why don't you
behaved
just
badly.
step in your body
Maybe
and
that
notice
person
that you can actually feel
crossed
the feelings
over
of being
your
totally
values
motivated. If you do this
or
correctly,
your
you should
boundaries,
have the same feeling
and
of
maybe
being
deserves to be
absolutely and totally
So
motivated,
in
ready to go.
situations like this, what we recommend
go right back
to
now
our
to that
students
time.
is to wait
Notice
until
that
timeline
time when you were totally
and do
motivated.
timeline
Float
therapy
down
on
in
all
your
major
body
negative
and
emotions
look through
to
your
get
own
rid
eyes.
of
If you
feeling
see
bad or
yourself in the
disliking
picture,
that person, and
that's
then
not what we're
noticing what's
asking you to do.
happening
So get in
in
your
the future,
body,
but not
look through your own
forcing
eyes,
themselves
see
to
what you
like
saw,
that
hear what you
person
heard at the time,
when
and feel the
in
feelings
a
of
natural
being
way,
totally
consciously or
motivated.
unconsciously or both.
Got it?
They dislike
Good.
him or her.
Now, please notice the feeling of being totally motivated. Notice that
So what
feeling
you've
that
just
you
seen in the
have.
previous demonstration,
And when you're ready,
you've seen both
I would like
contrastive
you
analysis
to, just for
demonstration,
fun,
which is the comparing of
take
the
that
two
picture
pictures,
and as
and
quickly
also
as it
the
can,
second part,
zoom
which
it out
is
from
the
you.
change,
There it goes, on the wall,
which is
far
mapping
away from
across.
you.
Mapping across,
Zoom it out, push it
what
away.
happens once you've done
Fast.
the contrastive analysis.
And as it goes
You
away
shift
from you,
the
it becomes
first set of
smaller and smaller
submodalities.
and
You
darker
change
and darker.
the first set of submodalities into
So if
the
you
second
haven't done
set
it
of
already,
submodalities.
take that picture
Which, as
and
you've
as
seen,
quickly as
changes the way that person feels
there it goes.
about that
Becomes small,
food they used
dark,
to like too much
and
and
very far
they
away
wish
from
they didn't. It changes the
Push it
internal
all the way
representations
across
of
the room
person
if you're in a room, or
about
far
that
away
very
from you if
first
you're outside.
picture or
Shrink it down so it
representation
becomes the
that
size
you're
of a
looking at.
postage stamp.
So
And it's small,
now that we
and it's
talked about
dark,
like to dislike,
far away
let's see
from
what
you,
other
in the other corner
applications
of
we
the
might have for this very same of processes.
Now,
We're working.
Do you have
We're
more
working
feelings
with
of
one or
motivation?
two sets of different sets of
Where are
submodalities.
those feelings?
So
Just notice.
let's turn now.
Notice
to
if you had more
page
feelings
28.
now, when the picture is all the way across the room,
Track
small and
11,
dark,
belief change script.
or where you had more feelings
So here we go now on page
when you
28.
were looking through your own eyes.
This is the submodalities
and you
belief
remembered
change
exactly that
script.
time when you were totally motivated.
And of
If you do
course,
this
as in
correctly,
any other
and if you are like
submodality
most
technique,
people,
you always
you will probably
have to
have had most
handy
feelings when you
the
were inside
submodalities
the picture,
checklist,
looking through your
which
own eyes.
starts on page 29. And
Now we have
already
used a few of the
first 2 parts of that
submodalities,
one.
and we will see what they are specifically in just a moment. But
You also
notice
have
the
some
size
extra
of that
pages of
picture when it
submodalities
is across the
checklist.
room. It's the size of a
So
postage
even if
stamp.
you use one of those for all the exercises,
Versus when you are in
still
it.
have
Notice that it has more
sufficient.
different meaning to you.
Also, you can copy
Isn't
and
it?
be able to use with
Isn't it
clients.
so? Notice that the
So
feeling
let's
of
see what
motivation
we're
is
going to do in
present
the
when
case
you
of
are inside
submodalities
there.
belief change.
And notice that it's
First
not
thing you're gonna
present
do, you're
when it's
gonna ask
across
the
the room
client, can you
and
think of a
small
limiting
and
belief?
dark.
Which
Now,
you wish
in
you
a
didn't
moment,
have.
not yet, but in a moment we're going to
Client
bring
says
it back.
yes, and then you
So what we're
ask
going to
the client,
do,
good.
at
What is it?
my prompting,
The client tells
you'll
you.
have it come at you
And then the next
at
question,
100 miles per
language,
hour.
precision in language.
And as it comes back toward you, it becomes,
Remember, you
it
can't
becomes
make up
big
questions and
bright,
expect good
and
results.
you're going to step right into it.
If you do
and
this,
you'll be
use
again
this
looking through your own
language.
eyes.
As you think about
Ready?
that belief,
1,
do
2,
you have
3.
a picture? The client says
You're in
yes,
it.
and
You're
as
looking
quickly
through your
as
own
you can,
eyes.
fast,
You're
at
in it.
high speed, you take
Now notice
page
that your
29
feeling of
or
motivation came back.
30 with submodalities checklist.
Do you notice
and
that?
you elicit all the submodalities of this belief.
Well,
And you
if
say,
you're
okay,
like
is
most
it black and
people,
white or color? Is
you
it
probably
near or
noticed
far?
that.
Is it bright or dim?
And now you
Very
already
quickly.
begin to notice
And
the
you elicit
difference between
So now you're done
submodalities.
with that.
is what
Number
makes a
two.
difference as to the
Can
meaning
you think of a
that
belief
picture.
which is no longer true?
Notice that the
For
motivation
example,
picture
perhaps
was
he
not
used to be a
motivating.
smoker. Someone who
when
was
he was far away
past
from
tense,
you.
yeah, who was
It
a
didn't
smoker,
mean motivation
used
to
to
you when
believe
he
they
was far
were a
away from you.
smoker, and they used to say at the time, "I
So
am a smoker."
this leads us
But now
to
they
a
no
great
longer
idea,
believe that.
because what that
Or someone
means
who used to own
is
a new
actually
2005
when we get motivated when we're at work,
They
or
believed that they were a new car
when we're
owner, and they
overly
said,
amped and
"I
overly
am
motivated,
a new
we can take it and
2005
calm
model
ourselves down if we
insert
need
here
to,
the brand,
because
car
we
owner."
can simply push the
But now
picture
they no
of
longer
motivation
do.
away from us.
Or perhaps the belief
But
that you are
if
10
we're
years
not
old.
motivated to do something
We
which
have
we would
something like
like
that,
to
which
do,
used
which
to
would
be
be
true for
good
you,
for
but no
us to do,
longer
which is
is.
necessary to be done,
So
we can
let
do
the client
exactly
think,
the
the client
opposite.
tells you,
We can
and you
change that
say,
motivation.
"Good, what is
And
it?"
that puts us in charge
As
of
you
when
think about that
and
old
how
belief,
we want to be
Note the same
motivated.
question, yeah? Do
In
you
addition,
have a picture?
This was, by the way,
you
just a
think about that old
little,
belief,
just
do
a
you
little
have a
taste
picture?
of what we
Where's
can
that
do with
old belief
motivation.
now? The
In
client
addition,
tells you,
other
and then
submodalities
again,
and all of the
do your
submodalities
submodalities checklist,
allow
and
us
then
to
you
be in
list
charge
the
of most
submodalities
of
and
our
write them all
internal
down very quickly.
representations. Like, what
It's
are we
written
doing
here
with
for
them?
best
What are we
results
doing
for
with
location
internal,
should be
with the internal
Remember, we talked in
representations?
terms of drivers. Location is number one
Track
on our
3,
list of priorities.
submodalities techniques.
So when you've done that, you change the submodalities
So if you're not
of
already
the
there,
old belief.
why
they
don't you just
want
now
to
turn
have
to
the
page
limiting belief
25.
they don't want to have anymore.
Page 25 in the
Into
manual.
the submodalities.
There are a
of
number of different techniques
the belief
that we're
no
going to be
longer
going
true.
through. And I think a number of things that I need to explain to you so you can make
the belief they don't
submodalities
want to
work
have
the
anymore
best way possible.
no longer true for
So
them.
we have different techniques
And then you
under
test.
the big umbrella of what we
Ask the
call
client,
submodalities.
now, what do you think about that old belief?
So let's recap.
And the
We
client
said that
said, well,
submodalities are
it doesn't
finer
feel like it has
distinctions
any-
or subsets, if you wish,
I don't care
of
about it
modalities. They are distinctions, smaller
exactly what you want, by the way.
distinctions of each and every one
Number 4.
of our modalities.
Can you think of a belief which for you
So on
is
page
absolutely
25, there
true?
are a number of
Like,
techniques
for example, the
that
belief
we're
that the
going to
sun
be
is
going
to come
through,
up tomorrow.
and a number
You
of
believe
things that I
that?
need to explain to
Or
you.
the belief that it's
and
good
I'll
to
do this
breathe.
right now.
Yeah.
First of all,
The
there
client
is
says,
contrastive
yes, I have one.
analysis.
You ask, good,
Yes,
what is it?
NLP has a lot of
client tells
jargon,
you.
and this is just part of
And
it.
then you say again the
So
magic
this
words.
technique, which is called
As you think
contrastive
about that
analysis,
belief, do you have
involves
a picture?
simply comparing two pictures.
Client says,
We're not
yes.
doing anything
As
with
quickly
them,
as
we're
you
just
can,
comparing
you
them.
elicit the
We're
submodalities,
looking
write
at
them
one,
down on
we're
your
looking at the
submodalities
other one,
checklist.
and we notice
Very
what
fast,
are the
very
differences
fast. If you think you're
between
fast,
the two.
be faster.
Now, here is our next jargon.
Good. After you elicit the submodalities, go to number 5.
There is such
Can you
thing
think of a
as
belief
a
that you
driver
want to have, which is the
in
opposite of
relation
the
to
belief
submodalities.
that
And
the old
drivers
belief that you didn't want to have
are the
anymore.
critical
Belief is number 1, the one first
submodalities
that we elicited.
when we compare to internal
Client says
representations,
yes. You say
are
good,
those
what is it?
critical
Client tells
submodalities that actually
say, as you think about
make
that
the
belief, do you
most
have a picture?
difference.
Client has a
Imagine that you are on a
elicit
bus.
the submodalities,
You are traveling on a bus,
change the submodalities
and
of
the
number
driver
5.
of the bus is actually in charge.
Then you believe that the client
So when
wants
the
to have.
driver decides to
Into
take the bus
submodalities of number 4,
to the
which is
left
the
and
belief
turns
absolutely
left,
true.
everybody
Now,
in
what's
that
that gonna
bus
do? It's going to make the
everybody
new
on
belief
that
the client
bus
wants to have absolutely true for
is
them.
going to turn left. Another
So
metaphor
test,
to represent
and you say now,
what
what do you
are
believe?
the drivers in submodalities would be,
And you can even say, what do you
imagine the
believe you have
CEO
to
of a
believe?
company, of a corporation,
In the
CEO
submodalities
takes a
section,
decision.
So far we've done contrasting
and everybody in the
analysis,
company
mapping the
follows that
And we also
decision that's been
discussed
taken by the
belief
CEO.
change with submodalities.
So in a way we can say
now
the
let's
drivers
move on to
are
switch pattern.
the
So
CEOs
let's look at
of
page
submodalities.
32.
When the driver changes,
Track 12.
this is important to
Keys to
remember,
successful
when
switch
the
pattern.
driver changes, all the
Now
other
let's look at keys to a
submodalities will
successful
change
switch pattern.
with it.
And we're going to learn during this NLP
So drivers are
practice
critical
one
in
switch
our
pattern,
work with submodalities.
which is the original
So
one proposed
if
in
you,
the
for
book
instance,
using the brain
compare
for change
ice cream,
by Richard
which
Shannon.
most people like, and
This
yogurt,
is a
which some
specific
people
sort of
don't
switch
like.
pattern that allows us to
They're both
change
similar
and give
kind
a
of things.
direction to the kind of thinking
But if
we're
you
going
love
on.
ice cream, and for example,
Now,
didn't like or
theoretically,
hated yogurt,
a switch pattern
if you
has
compare
purpose
the
of
difference
creating
between
a
these two
momentum
pictures
towards a
or these two
compelling
internal representations,
and also
you
a
could
switch pattern
notice
installs
that
choices
there
for
will
a new way
be
of life,
some
rather than
submodalities
removing
that will be
or changing
different.
all habits.
Because
In other words, it gives
submodalities
us
tell
new
us
choices.
Also,
very simple.
how we make the
If you
difference
want
between
a
what we like
big picture of
and what we
a
dislike.
swish pattern
It's not the
does, it
content.
tells
Now you
the
may
brain,
think it's the content
don't go this
of the
way,
picture
which is
itself.
the
Well, it's
normal
ice cream, that's
track.
why I like it.
The brain would
No.
go, creating a certain
If you
behavior.
would work,
It says
and we're
not
going to
this
talk
way,
about this in a moment,
that way.
if you were to
Not
take
this
that
way,
picture of
that
ice
way.
cream
Not
and
this
change
way,
the
that
qualities
way.
of that
Not
picture,
this way,
therefore
that way.
you will change the
Not this way,
submodalities, you
that
will
way.
end up
And
maybe
eventually,
disliking ice cream. I'm
following
not saying you should do
this
this.
process,
I'm talking theoretically.
It's not a long process,
Unless
by the way.
you
It's
want
a short process. The
to do
brain
it.
learns that the old way
we'll talk
that
about
wasn't
that, as I
useful,
said, in a moment.
wasn't creative or productive or good behavior can be
So
changed,
to
and the brain
recap,
automatically goes
contrastive
into the
analysis
new way.
simply
That's the big picture of a
compares two
But
internal
as
representations,
such, it
two
gives new
pictures
choices
that you hold inside your head
rather
about two
than
different
being busy
things.
with removing
Makes
the
a comparison
old
and notices where
So
are
number
the
one,
differences.
we get a picture that
In
represents the
relation to
habit
this,
or the
we
situation
have discussed
you'd
the
like
issue
to
of
change.
drivers, which
The
are
question is when
the
you think
most
of-
important of those submodalities,
Wow,
and
whatever that
we'll
is.
figure out in a moment
Do
how
you have a
to how
picture?
to discover
Again,
which
what
ones
is the
are
language?
those.
We didn't say,
But
can you
drivers
make a
are
picture?
those
Can you get a picture?
very
Get a
important
picture of that. We
submodalities
said,
that
do you have
when they
a
change,
picture?
every other submodality in that picture will
Then
change.
we'll get a
with
picture
that.
of the type of person you would like to be.
Next
and say,
is
how would you
next
like to be
technique
instead?
is called mapping
When you
across.
think of that, do you have a
Of course,
picture?
in order to
Number three, you
do
will
this
change the
technique,
visual intensity of the
we
desired
need to
state,
discover
as
the
in
drivers,
brightness or size or distance,
which
for the most
is the
real,
purpose
most
of doing first
positive
contrastive
kinesthetic
analysis before
for the
we do
client. The
mapping
client
across.
loves it a lot, likes it a
And
lot.
then mapping across
Number
presupposes
four, you bring
that
back the
we're
old
changing
Say
the
to the client,
submodalities
step
of
into
one
the picture,
of those internal
fully
representations into the submodalities of the
Number
other.
five, insert it in the lower left
So,
hand
for
corner
example,
as a small
if
dark
you
picture of the
wanted,
desired state.
and if you loved ice cream
Number
and
six,
hated yogurt, like in our
simultaneously have the
example,
picture of current state.
you
rapidly
wanted
shift
to
and recede to a distant
not
point
eat
where dark
ice
picture
cream
explodes into
because
full view.
you're eating too much ice cream,
And this
or
can
for
be
whatever
accompanied
reason you want to
by
give it up.
either internal or external
What you
sound.
could do
But it's
is
not
you could
necessary.
elicit the submodalities
sound
of ice cream, and
It's
then
only for
you
us
could
to know
elicit the
how quickly
submodalities of
we
yogurt.
need to make that process.
Thus, you have now two
And then you repeat number
different
six,
pictures.
a minimum of 5 times.
On both of them,
Says, yeah, enjoy the results.
you have certainty
Some notes
that
to
you
keep
know
in
the
mind. This is a big
distinctions,
picture,
the
by the way. This is
submodalities
not the
of
script we're going to
those
use. This is a
pictures.
big picture.
So
Notes
then
to
you
keep
would
in mind.
change the
Fully
submodalities
associated in the
of
old
the
pattern.
one that you like, the ice
We
cream.
have
if
detailed
you
sensory
wanted to
specific
get
representations
rid
in
of
the
it.
desired state.
If you wanted to give
Now
it up.
see, if the
You
client
would
is
change the
associated in the
submodalities
final
of
picture,
ice
that's
cream
an outcome.
into
And if
the
it's
submodalities
dissociated
of
in the
the
final picture,
yogurt
that's a
picture.
direction.
And
You want the
theoretically,
client
then
dissociated
you would like ice
in
cream
the
less,
desired
or
state.
not at all.
And the client being associated.
So mapping
in the
across
present
involves
state.
the
Because this
changing
leads us to the
of
golden
one
rule
set of
NLP.
drivers into another set of
golden rule of
drivers, which
NLP
essentially
says
changes the
present state
whole set of
associated
submodalities,
and desired
and
state
therefore it changes the
dissociated.
whole
Remember this.
internal representation.
And as we
And
learned
the meaning
earlier,
attached to
you
that
will remember
internal
that
representation.
associated means
And this
looking
is
through your own
important.
eyes, meaning you do not see your
Good.
body
Next
in the
technique
picture.
in submodalities
You are
is
in
called
your body.
a swish pattern. And
Dissociate
that involves replacing
means
actually
you
one
see
internal
yourself
representation
in the picture.
or
So
one
in the
internal
desired
picture.
state, yes,
With
you
another.
want to see your body
This
in
process
that picture.
directionalizes
That's the
the
golden
series
rule
of
of NLP.
internal representations
It's
so
preferable
that
that
the
the client
desired
is dissociated
state
in the final
is more
picture,
common than the present
thus giving
state.
the client a direction
And
rather
we'll
than
talk
a
about how to do that
completed
when we get
outcome.
there.
Because
There are
it
also
creates
some
a
other
compelling
dissociative
picture.
techniques which involve shifting a point of view
Number E,
and
make
viewing
sure
a
to have a break
specific
state
internal
between each
representation
switch
from another
pattern,
position
so
or
as
another
not to loop
location.
them.
And that will change
One
the
way
meaning
of
that we
making
attach
sure that you
to
have a
that
break
internal
state
representation.
is if the client closes eyes during each step of the process.
This
and
technique,
opens
that
them in between
dissociative
steps.
technique,
But if the
that
client
I'm
prefers to do the
discussing
process
right
with
now,
eyes open, that's okay.
is frequently
You
used to
just
take
change
the
subject,
charge of a
say to
negative
the client,
emotion.
clear the
For
screen,
instance,
and that's
phobia,
sufficient.
as in the phobia model. And also
But
this
now
is what
that we
happens
learned
during timeline
The
therapy
big picture
in a number of
the
different
switch
cases.
pattern. Let's move
And
on
also
page
we
23.
have the
And you
technique
see
called perceptual
the
positions,
submodality switch
which
patterns.
simply says
But first of all, let me
the
ask you a question. Why would
perception,
you
the
wanna do that?
perception of a
Why would you
certain
wanna do
situation can be
switch
changed by
pattern?
shifting
What's the point?
viewpoints and
Do you know
viewing a
anybody
specific internal
in the past or
representation
even now
of an event
who has
or
a behavior
person
like
from
they're biting
one
their
of
nails
three
and they
different
don't
positions.
want to buy their nails. Their nails look terrible.
In this
And yet,
situation,
they don't
The
seem to
first
be able to stop.
position is
They remember
looking
always
through your own eyes from your
after
point of view.
they beat their nails again.
Second
Oh my God,
position is
I didn't
looking
want to
through
do
another
this.
person's eyes,
And yet they
usually
do it
the
again.
person you might have a
Do
conflict
you know anybody
with.
who has a behavior
And the
that's
third position
just,
is involving the
they don't
entire
like it,
scene
they don't
from a
want it, they
dissociated
want to change
position.
it.
Say, for
and yet
instance,
they don't
above
seem
the
to
entire
be
event.
able to.
This is also
Do you
very
know anybody
useful
who
as a dissociative technique.
Has a
And
certain
it's useful for
negative state,
incorporating
they get
new
into
learnings.
automatically. It's almost like somebody
Those
pushes
are the
a button.
5 major
Somebody pushes a button
submodalities
and they, boom,
techniques that
respond
we're
with a
going to be
negative
learning in
state.
this
They're
segment.
frustrated,
And we'll go
or
through each one
irritated, or,
and
they
one
feel
by
somehow
one.
bad.
And what
they
I would
don't
like to do
They
is
think
to
this
talk to
silly.
you
I
about
shouldn't
what
do
it
this.
is that
And
you
yet
need to know
they
in
don't
order to
seem
make
to be
this
able to
work.
stop, and they think
There are
consciously,
some
I'm not
things
going to do
that
that again.
actually make
Only to
submodalities
find
work.
themselves again doing
Now
it
let's look
again
at page
and again and
26.
again and again.
And
Do you know
discuss
anybody
each and
like this?
every
Maybe
one
it's
of them.
you. Now here's a question for you.
So we're on page
How would
26.
you like to be able to change that? How would you
Track
like to be able
4
to change that in
triggers.
an easy way? Non-invasive way. In a technique that takes about
One of the
10
major
minutes.
issues when we work
If
with
so.
submodalities is to find
Would that be
the
any
trigger
value to you?
that kicks off that
Would
set
you
of
find something
submodalities
important
distinctions.
in
What
it?
does this mean?
Something
in
that could
It
assist
means
you in
that-
doing the change that you want to do?
Let's think of
I
a
think so.
behavior,
But
for
the answer is
example.
up to you.
A behavior
If the answer
starts
is yes,
somewhere.
let's look together
It's not happening all the time,
on how to do a
24/7.
switch pattern in a moment.
A behavior
We've seen what
begins
a
at a certain
switch pattern
point.
is. It's
Now
just a
that
change.
very
It's a
moment of
change in the
beginning of the
direction
behavior
brain. The brain says,
is called the
I'm
trigger.
going this way, but it's
What
saying, no,
triggers
I
that
don't want it to
behavior?
go that way. I want
What
it to go
makes
the
that
other way.
behavior
Not this way,
kick
the other way.
and
Not this
begin?
way,
Kick
the
off
other way.
and begin.
And eventually the brain learns. And
So
by the way,
the
brain
trigger
learns
is
very
what
quickly.
it
Your mind learns
causes
extremely quickly.
to
So,
make that difference
switch pattern
inside of
assists
you.
you in doing that kind of a change.
And
Telling
so
the brain,
if
I
we
don't
are
wanna do
going
this-
to be
this whole
working
behavior anymore.
on
I don't wanna
mapping the
feel
cross,
that way. Although
the
a lot of
technique
people
that I
in NLP
mentioned
have
previously.
elevated the swish sound,
By the way,
sound.
don't
When
get
you are
confused.
forced,
Mapping the
let's face
cross
it,
is the NLP
it
jargon
simply tells
term.
the client how
The
quickly
English
to do the process.
expression of the
People
same
said,
thing
oh,
is like
it's an
to
auditory
dislike
anchor.
technique.
Yes, it is.
So mapping
But
the
the most
cross
important thing
and
is
like to
tell the
dislike
client how
are one and the
quickly
same
they should
thing.
do it. Switch pattern has
Track
to be
5.
done very quickly. In fact,
Submodalities
all
checklist.
submodalities have to be done faster.
So in order to elicit
remember these words, faster
those
than the
distinctions
conscious mind can
of each
process.
of our modalities that
Because
belong to our
honestly,
internal
folks,
representations or
you
our
are not
internal
doing this
pictures,
process
if you
consciously.
wish.
You are
We have to
enlisting
start
the
with the
unconscious
list
mind
of
as we've
submodalities.
seen so far.
And this
doing
is
the
in
work
the manual
for
on
you.
page 29.
The sound simply tells the unconscious mind.
So if you
how
think
to
of
do
a
it.
certain visual picture, any kind of picture,
Here are
think
some
of
things
something,
to keep
pick
in
a
mind.
picture. Think of something, don't change it,
First
just
of all,
stay,
you want
stay
the
steady with
client
it.
fully associated in the old
What
pattern.
we can do is to
Whether
begin
it's
to
a
ask
behavior
ourselves
or a minor
several
state,
questions.
You want the
For
client
instance,
initially to
is
fully
that picture
associate in
black
the
and
old
white?
pattern.
Or
You
is it
want the
colored?
client to have a
Is it
detailed
near to
sensory
you?
specific representation.
As you look at the picture, is
also
it
of the
near to
desired
you or is
state.
it far
What would
away?
they like to do
Is it
instead?
bright or is it dim?
How would they
What's
like
the
to
location?
be
Is it right in
instead?
front of you?
How would they like
is
to
it up?
feel
Is it to the
instead?
right? Is it to the left? Is it down?
You
What's
want
the size of
client
the picture?
associated in
Is
the
it
final
small? Is
picture.
it life size? Is it bigger
And you
than
want the
life
client
size?
associated in the final direction.
The issue of associated and
So there are
dissociated
certain things
is
we're
very
gonna
simple to
discuss
understand,
as
so
we're
pay
gonna
attention
move
now.
now onto the page 33.
Associated, as you said,
And we're going to discuss them
simply
specifically.
means you are looking
switch
through
pattern
your own
is
eyes.
very
You are
powerful.
in your
It's
body.
a
You are
marvelous
looking
technique
through
to
your
use.
own eyes.
Switch pattern is extremely powerful, as we
Dissociated
said, but
means you
they
see
don't take a lot of
yourself,
time, see?
you see
the point of
your
switch pattern.
body
It's a quick
in the
technique.
picture. So
They
you're
don't
looking
take
at
a lot of
yourself.
detailed personal
When you're
history,
looking through
you
your
don't
own
have
eyes
to
and
do
you are
that to the client's
associated,
story.
you don't see your body
The client
because you are
doesn't
in
have
it.
to relive through it again.
So you are either in it
the
or you're
downside
seeing
of
yourself.
switch pattern
That's
is that it
associated
doesn't
or dissociated.
It doesn't last.
Is the
as
picture
long as
focused or
timeline
default?
therapy.
Is the focus
Timeline
changing?
therapy actually
or is it
is
standing?
an in-depth intervention.
Is the picture
as you will
framed or
see
is
when
it
we get there.
panoramic?
But
Does it have a
the
frame
upside
around
again
it?
is that
Or
it
is
can
just
get
simply
done.
panoramic?
It can
Is the
get
picture
done
a movie or
very
is it a still?
quickly. It can do the job.
If it's a movie,
a small
is it
amount of time,
fast, normal
and
speed,
it does a
slow?
very, very
How
good
is it?
job.
And then what's the contrast?
Now we are on
Is it
page
really
23.
high contrast
Submodalities, switch
or
patterns.
low contrast or is it just normal?
Number one,
Is it 3D
eliciting
or is
from
it
the
flat?
client the present state.
And what angle are you viewing the
That leads
picture
me
from?
to say a very important thing.
Now, are there
Switch
certain
number of pictures?
As
Do
a
they
technique
shift?
is always used for a
Then you see in the box,
present state,
the next question is, are
minor
there any sounds that are
negative
important?
state. Now let's define
And
what's a
that
minor
leads
negative
us
state.
to
Could be
the
something like
auditory
frustration,
submodalities.
irritation,
So far we
being
have gone
bugged,
through the visual ones. let's make a
So in the
difference
auditory
between minor
submodalities, we
negative
have
state and
location.
major
Location of
negative
what?
state.
Location of the sound. Where
Major
is it coming
negative
from?
states
What
are the
direction?
following. Anger.
Is it the sound
sadness,
internal? Do you hear it
fear,
inside you? Or is it
hurt,
external, coming from outside? Is it loud
Those
or is
are
it
what we
soft?
consider to be
Is
major
it fast or is it
negative
slow?
states. And
Is it the
we
pitch high
learn how to let
or
them
is it
go
low?
completely.
What's
and
the
change
tonality?
the
What's
way
the
we
timbre?
feel by using
Are there
timeline therapy.
pauses?
Anything else
What's
that's
the
not
cadence?
major is considered
What's the
a
duration
minor
of those sounds?
negative state.
Is there anything
Switch
unique
pattern is
about the
also
sound?
used for a behavior. As we said, the behavior.
And now
of
as we look
biting
further
nails,
down
or a
on the
behavior
left-hand side, we
of,
see that there are
playing
any
computer games
feelings
instead
that
of
are
doing
important.
your-
That's the next
your work.
question.
Or
And that leads
being
us,
on
this
a social
question,
media
are there any
network
feelings that
and
are
forgetting
important,
about
leads us into the
time
kinesthetic
when you're there
submodalities.
instead of completing your projects. These
What are the kinesthetic
behaviors,
submodalities?
and they
Well,
all can
location.
change
Location of what?
using the
Location of the feeling, because we're talking feelings.
So,
Location
once
is
you
what is in your
present state of
body?
behavior, here's the
Is it in
question
your
you
chest?
ask.
Is it in your stomach? Is
How
it in
do
your
you know
arm?
it's
What is it?
time to
Is it? Does it have a
exactly
size,
feel
that feeling?
or
Does it
that
have a
behavior
particular
by
shape?
something
Some
else?
people describe a
Or
particular
by
shape
computer
to the
games?
feeling.
How do you know
Is it
it's time? Now
intense?
let's talk about
What's
this
the
question,
intensity?
because this is
Is
the
it a
crucial
steady
point
feeling?
in having a
Does it
switch
have
pattern system.
movement? What's the duration?
This question
Does it have a
will
vibration to
actually
it?
elicit
Does it have pressure
the trigger
or heat? Or
for
it
the
feels like
beginning
it
of the
weighs a
minor
lot?
negative
Does it have
state
weight?
or the behavior?
Now
we
there are some
define what's a minor
submodalities that are
negative
very
state. Now let's
important
define a
and
behavior.
some that are less important.
Here is an example that happened in
All
one of our
submodalities
trainings. The client
techniques
said the following.
can be done with a restricted
Here's a
number of
behavior I want to
submodalities.
change. My problem is my
The
desk
whole
is a
list that
mess.
we just went through is necessary when we do
And
modeling.
the practitioner said, okay,
Modeling is a process
when you
that we
think of
learn
my
with master
desk in a mess,
practitioner.
do you have a picture?
And it's not necessary for
The client
the
has no fault.
successful completion of
The
all the
client doesn't know
submodalities
NLP.
techniques that we learn.
But a
in
good
the
NLP practitioner
So
will
therefore,
recognize immediately
please do me a favor.
that my desk
Take
is
a
a
pen,
mess,
maybe
it's
a
in
red
a
one,
state,
and
not a
draw a
behavior.
line
Let's learn how
under
to
the submodality called
First of all,
movie
let's see
or
why is
still
it not a
in
negative
the visual
state. How do
category.
you feel my desk
Do you
is
see
a
there?
mess?
It's written movie or still.
Now you may be
Draw
in
a
a rush
line
to say, well, I feel bad when I
underneath
see
that.
the desk.
So you
Well,
know
the
you
client didn't say
stop there. You don't
The
pass
client said
that
the
point
words, my desk
for
is
all
a
the
mess.
techniques that we
It's
do
a
in the
descriptive
practitioner.
statement.
Also draw
It
a
doesn't
line,
say
please,
I feel
under
sad,
loud
I
or
feel
soft,
angry,
which is
I
the
feel
fourth
frustrated, I feel it
category
doesn't say
of
any of that.
submodalities
It
in the
says
auditory
words,
section.
My desk is a mess. So
And
I
also
would like to propose
under
that you
intensity,
cannot
which
feel
is the
your
fourth
desk being a mess.
submodality in the
Doesn't feel
kinesthetic
anyhow.
section.
Now let's see.
Draw that
it's
line
established
there,
it's
and that's
not
your signal
a
that
state.
you need to stop there.
Then, of course, you'll be tempted to say, oh, it's a behavior. Well, what's the behavior?
Track 6, submodalities elicitation.
What's the behavior? My
At this
desk is a
point, it's
mess.
probably important for you to hear a
It's not a behavior.
submodalities elicitation.
Why not?
So
Because
we've actually asked Lori
it's maybe
to
a
assist
lack of a
Ted.
behavior.
Ted
What's the
will
behavior?
demonstrate
That
this.
It's lacking.
And she will come up with a
It's
picture.
cleaning up the desk. But even
And
that is
Ted
my
will
guess.
do
It's
a
my
real
mind read.
submodalities
I
elicitation.
don't know. The client didn't say those words.
As Ted does this,
So
please
my desk is a
notice
mess.
the
Doesn't
speed with
describe
which Ted
behavior.
elicits the submodalities.
And it doesn't describe
This is another important
another
point to
minor
make
negative
submodalities
state.
work. Remember we talked about
If the
triggers,
client was
finding
to
the
say,
triggers.
when I look at my
The
desk
second
being messy,
important
I feel bad.
distinction
Oh,
that you need to remember
yes,
always
now
when
we
you work
have
with
feel
submodalities
bad.
is the issue of speed.
It's not very
Human
specific,
mind
because
is not
feel bad
designed
could
to
be
linger
different
about
emotions.
slowly.
We could mind read a bunch
We
of different
move
emotions,
from one
but still
thought to
we
another,
have
to another,
a
to
state.
another, rather fast. In
Or
fact,
if client
speed
says,
like fast.
I always
Thoughts
forget to take the
move
garbage
around
out.
very, very quickly. And
So
if
the
you are
behavior is
not
taking the
fast
garbage
enough
out,
when
the
you
garbage
elicit
is always
submodalities, the person
Okay,
you are
I
eliciting the
can see the behavior
submodalities
there.
with, your
But my
client
desk is
or
a mess.
somebody
It's
else,
not descriptive, neither of
that
the state
person's mind
or
will
behavior.
begin to
So
wander
pay
somewhere
attention.
else.
When the
And then
client
your
tells you the
elicitation will be
statement
imprecise
of the presenting
and
problem,
incorrect.
you got to pay attention and listen. Are we
And so,
working
Lori,
on a state,
thanks
or
for
are we
joining me
working
today.
on a behavior?
Thank you.
And I wonder if you can
So I'm
remember a
back at number
time
one now.
when you were totally motivated.
Yes.
Can you remember a specific time?
Yes.
And as you go back to that time now, what I'd like
Once
you to
the
do is to
client
float
tells you the
down into your
behavior or
body
the negative
and
state,
see what you saw,
you
hear what
say,
you heard,
when
and
you
feel
think
the
of
feelings
that
of being totally
State
motivated.
of behavior.
Okay.
Do you
Good.
have a picture?
Now, as you remember this picture of motivation, is it in black and white or color?
Color.
Notice
Is
that
it
I
near
use
or
the
far?
same words.
Near.
Do
Is it
you
bright or
have
dim?
a
Bright.
picture?
What's the location?
As we discussed in submodalities.
Is it like in the center of the screen? Or?
Center of the screen.
So the
How-
client
how-
tells you
how
I
big
have
is
a
the picture?
yes, and then you break state.
life size.
Now,
And is it associated or
it's
dissociated?
possible that the client will give you a kinesthetic
Is it focused or
answer.
defocused?
Let's take the example of
Is the
biting
focus
nails.
changing at all?
When you
Yes.
ask the client, how
so
do
it
you know
changes
it's
focus.
time to
Yes.
bite
Is
your
it framed or
nails?
panoramic?
The client may say,
Panoramic.
well,
And
when
is it a
I
movie or
feel
still?
them
Movie.
being
Are there any
rough
sounds that
or
are important?
being long or being the corners
Quiet,
not
watery sounds.
having
Oh,
round
that's nice.
corners or something like that.
What's the location?
Now,
Close.
Are they coming
how do
from
you do a
inside
swish
you or
on a
outside you?
kinesthetic?
From
By
inside.
definition,
Uh-huh.
all submodalities
And,
techniques,
are they
which
fast or
include
slow?
swish pattern,
Slow.
are
Good. Are there any
the
feelings that are
domain
important?
of the visual
Yes.
submodalities.
What's the location of the feeling?
Therefore,
The
if the
middle of
client
my
gives you a
chest.
kinesthetic answer
And
like
how
when
big
I
is it?
feel my nails being
You can show
rough,
me.
Like the size of the sun.
then
Oh,
you
wow.
need to
Okay. And what's the shape?
really push
Circular.
for the
And is it
visual.
intense
And then
or
you will
not
ask,
intense?
Radiating.
how do you know
good.
it's
Is it
time to
steady?
feel your nails being rough?
Moving.
Very good. Okay, thanks,
Because
Laura. You can step out of the
normally,
picture now and
the
come on back in the room.
fingers
Thank you very much.
on a hand
Thank you for
do
having me.
not rub against each other
Okay, good.
in a way in
All
which
right.
makes you feel the nails.
Well done.
There is some sort
That
of
was an
a
example of how to elicit
unconscious
submodalities.
volition, if you wish.
So when you are
that
eliciting
makes
submodalities,
fingers
you
rub
should
the
do it
nails
that
so you
quickly.
can feel them.
So you
Otherwise,
notice
don't
that our client
accidentally
was quite fast
do
in
that
her
behavior.
answers, and your client may or may not be
it
that
is our
fast in
contention
their
that
answers.
There
However,
must be a picture.
you,
Even
the
if
coach,
it's out of
need to be really
consciousness,
fast.
even if it runs
The
only
moment
at
the
unconscious
client
level, that
gives you the answer,
precedes
instantly
the act
you fire
of
the next
touching
question.
the nails
Move
with
as
the other
quickly as you
fingers
possibly can.
and noticing
You notice how
whether
quickly
they
Ted
are
moves
rough or not.
when you elicit all those submodalities.
Therefore, hopefully,
The
you can-
downside
the
is that
client
if you
will
don't move
find
that
the
quickly,
picture,
the client's picture could also
associated with
change.
the
Or they,
beginning
in the process
of
of
the behavior
thinking
of
other
biting
thoughts,
nails,
they could bring in another
by
picture.
answering your question,
Or
how
you
do
can,
know
they
it's
can have
time
simply
to feel
completely
your
different
nails
subjects
being
they're
rough?
thinking of.
This is
So
all
you
of number
must
one.
move
This is
really
a
quickly
setup,
to
and you
keep
need
the
to do it
client's
very
mind
precisely.
focused on the picture you want.
Good. Once
And
you are
do
very
it as
precise
quickly
here, then you
as
move at number
Ted
2,
has
and you elicit
demonstrated.
the desired state. The present state was biting
Good.
nails, let's say.
Track
The
7,
desired state
like, dislike,
follows.
script.
And the question you're asking here is, how would you like to feel?
Now let's turn to
or
page
act
27.
instead?
But
If
before
you're
we
working
do,
on
let me
negative
ask you a
state,
question.
you're going to use the question.
Did you
how
ever
would
have
like
a
to
food
feel instead?
that you
If you're working on
really
a
liked a
behavior
lot
like
and
biting
which you
nails,
didn't?
you're going to use the question.
Maybe
how
you
would
went to the
like
doctor and the
act
doctor said
instead?
to you, maybe you shouldn't eat
And the
insert
client says,
here,
well, I rather...
whatever the doctor would have said. Or maybe you are
Something else,
drinking too
and
much
whatever
soda
the
drinks
client
and you go,
describes.
okay,
The
okay,
client needs
that's
to
enough,
tell you
that's
what
enough.
they want.
I'm really over the top.
And you say then, good.
Or maybe you are
When
eating
you
too
think of that,
much bread or too
new
many sweets or I don't know.
positive state or new behavior.
A food that
Do
you're
have
eating a
picture?
lot and you know it's not good for you, but
client says,
somehow
"Yes, I
you
have a
can't
picture."
resist it. And
Now
when you
let's
start,
read
then you
number
eat too
3 and
much.
I'm going to explain.
Did it ever happen to you?
Assist the client in adjusting the visual
Well, what would
intensity of
happen
the
if
desired state for
you
the most
could,
positive kinesthetic?
in a
You say to
simple
the
way,
client, step into your body
using
in that picture and
this
adjust the
mapping
submodalities.
across or
So what
like
you're
to
gonna do,
dislike
you
process,
are going to
get rid of that.
uh,
If it acts
have
like an
the
addiction to
client
you, means
step
you
into
can't,
his or
you're
her
not in
body
control again, see?
inside the
So what I'm
desired
suggesting that
state's
there is a way
picture or the
of
desired behaviors.
Changing that and putting you
Then you're
in
gonna
control of
take
the
the
food or the
submodalities
drink
checklist,
rather than vice versa. Would that be
And
very
you
interesting?
are going to ask the client
that
whether
were
the
to be
picture is
the
black
case.
and white or color. If the client says, for instance,
Because this thing really works.
the picture is in color,
So if it's
you're
okay,
going to play around
let's
with
see
the
how to do it.
color so that the client likes
The
it the most.
submodalities
It gives
like
the
to
client
dislike
the
script.
most positive
is
feeling
what we
for
use
it.
to change
So let's say the
the
client says it's in color, then
submodalities
you
from
say, okay,
something that
pump
the
up
person
color, make it
likes
so
too much
beautifully
into something that the
powerful,
person
intense
dislikes.
colors. Do you
For
like
example, I
that?
mentioned earlier you can use ice
Now
cream
the client either is going to say yes or
and
no.
maybe
If the client
against
says yes,
you know, somebody
you
likes
say
ice
good,
cream and
leave
they
it
don't
that
like
way.
yogurt. It's just an example
If the client says no, I
because the
like it better,
qualities
then you say,
of
okay,
the
go
ice
the
cream
other
and yogurt
direction.
are quite similar.
Right.
They are both
you can
kind
make
of
it more
like
pastel, make
the
it
same
less
color, the same
intense
texture,
in terms of color.
but there is a
And see
major
if you like it
difference
better that way.
in
So
how
you're
a person
playing
holds
around
that in their
with-
minds, how
with
they
some
encode, you know, the coding.
For the
It's
purpose
like the
of
like the
having
like
this
the
picture
computer
be
coding. Yeah?
extremely
Our brains have
desirable,
a coding, and
extremely
those are called
likable
submodalities. You
to
know.
the client.
So how do we encode
And so you play
the
around with most
difference
important
between the
submodalities,
two?
which
No,
would be,
it's not the smell. No,
color
it's not
or
the
black
look.
and white.
No, it's not the
color,
taste either.
Bright or dim. The location.
It's those
you move it,
submodalities.
on the screen.
Therefore, let's
up,
look
down
at
in the
page
center,
27,
Change the location.
and
See
let's
where
look at
the
the
client
script.
likes it the best.
So
You can
here
make it a
is
bigger picture or
what
a
you
smaller
need
picture.
to
You
look
can
at
make
when
it
you
more
do this.
focused.
or less focused,
usually prefer.
On page
people
27,
prefer
we have
more
the
symbols.
submodalities like to
You can
dislike
change the
script.
frame into
I
panoramic
repeat,
or movie into
this
still.
is the same
That's about
process
it.
as mapping
You don't need
across.
to do more than
We
this.
might as
Just
well
play
say
it out.
submodalities mapping across script.
So
Just underneath the
what
title,
you
it says
want
here,
at the
whenever
end
you
of
do submodalities
playing
work, you
around
should
with
use the
you want
submodalities
the client
checklist,
to
which
end
is
up
on
with a
page
picture
29, because you
really
want
love.
to be
They
precise
really want.
and accurate.
They feel
Speaking of that,
really good
Speaking of that, precision
when
and
they
accuracy.
see that picture.
Submodalities are
Once you've
fine
done that,
distinctions.
and here is a
I mean,
crucial
how
point.
finer this, how much
Absolutely
more
crucial
of a
point
distinction
if
you
you
want
work
than
with,
just a little
with
bit of
switchback.
difference in
And
color.
this is
Or maybe
the
a tiny
next
little bit of
step.
difference in
Step
distance.
number 4.
Or maybe a big
It
difference
says
in
here,
distance.
step
But
out of the
these
picture.
are all very
So
small
you see your
distinctions
body in the
in
picture.
terms of how we encode
We're
different things, whether we like them or we dislike them.
in the desired
Therefore,
state, based on the
you
golden
need to
rule of
learn
NLP,
from
which
now on
says
to be
present state
extremely
associated,
precise
desired
with your
state
language.
dissociated.
That's why it says here, this adds
So the
to your
client leaves his
precision and
body in the
accuracy
picture.
under the big title on page
And then the
27.
break state. Change
Let's
the
take
subject,
an example.
break state.
Let's say you ask somebody,
Number 5,
can you
say
make
to the
a
client
picture
now,
of
can you take the old
ice cream?
picture and bring it up on the screen?
Listen, please,
Make
listen
sure
very
that you're
carefully to the
looking through your
language.
own eyes. This is
Can
the
you
behavior
make
or
a
the
picture
state they don't
presupposes
want to
that
have.
somebody makes it
The
up.
one that you want to get
Presupposes construct. Somebody constructs
sure that
that
you're looking
picture.
through your own
Now,
eyes.
by the way, we're not after
Number
that.
6,
Because if a person
as you have the old
loves a
picture on the
food
screen,
too
can you
much,
see the
they
new
already
picture in the
have
lower
that
left-hand
picture.
corner, small and dark. So you want to make
Another
sure
example.
that the picture
Let's
of the
say,
desired
and I've
state
seen this in one of our trainings.
is now
I've seen
shrunk,
a person
it has shrunk
that
small and
was
dark.
a
In
student
the
that was
lower
involved
left-hand
in
corner
doing this,
of the
this
client,
process.
not yours.
And
Of
the
the
practitioner
client.
asked him this wrong
And
question.
make sure
Can you make a
that
picture of
you
peanuts?
tell the client to see the
And the
body
student, in all
the
sincerity,
picture,
said, I
which
can
means
make
sure they are
a lot of
dissociated in
pictures
the
of
desired
peanuts.
state. That's all at number 6.
Very good answer.
Then
Now,
number
which one
7,
of those is the picture we
Good.
want to work
Now
with?
have the
you see?
picture explode big and bright.
So as long
Have it
as we
explode
don't
out
ask
so
the
it
question
covers up the
correctly,
old
we're not going to
picture,
get a
while the
correct
old
answer. So
picture
what's
shrinks
the
down and
question?
becomes small and dark in
We're
the
going
lower
to see
left-hand
it
corner. And
right
do
down
that
on the
as
page.
quickly as-
The point I'm making
Yes,
here
yes, fast.
is that you need to respect the
The client
languaging
says, okay. Number
in
8.
those scripts
You
very
say,
precisely.
okay.
Because if you don't,
The
you're not
client
going to get the
does it.
results.
And
And then you're
then
going to
you
say the
say
seven
the
dollars
magic
dislike or
word.
dislike doesn't work.
Clear
It
the
works
screen.
every single time.
Again,
If
as number
you're
4,
correct
number
and
9
precise.
is part of the crucial
Good, let's see.
steps in the successful
In brackets, it said
completion
generally
of
it is a good idea to ask,
switch pattern
is it
technique.
all right for your unconscious mind to
If
make
you
this
forget
change
to
today
clear the screen,
and for you to be aware
what you
of
will
it
achieve
consciously?
is a loop.
Now, why are we
between the
asking this
present
question?
state and the desired
Because
state,
if the
and
client
client
wants
will
to
get in the way.
make the change at the conscious
So
level,
number 9,
but
you can
at
put
the
a star
unconscious
next week.
level,
Number
the
4,
client
you can put a
doesn't-
star
is
next
not
week.
congruent.
These are 2 very important points.
then
And then what
probably
you do,
the
number 10 is
intervention will
repeat
not
steps 5,
succeed,
6,
or
8, and 9
even
until
if
the
it succeeds, the
unwanted
unconscious
state is not
mind will
accessible.
undo it.
So you'll do it will
Therefore,
it will
we
go
want
something
to
like
hear
this.
a
Okay,
congruent
present state on the
yes
screen.
from the
Desired
client.
state in the
Now, what's a
lower left-hand
congruent
corner,
yes? I
stand
just
dark,
demonstrated.
the body in the picture.
Yes. If the
1,
client
2,
says,
3, clear the screen.
yeah, I think so.
Present
Now, is that
state on the screen,
congruent?
desired
It
state in
doesn't
the
sound
lower left-hand corner,
congruent.
small and
It
dark.
sounds
1,
like
2, 3,
part of the
clear
client
screen.
wants, part of the client doesn't
And you
want. So
do
you
this.
don't want that.
Mark my words.
Somewhere there is a
Until
part of the client that
present
doesn't want
state
to
is not accessible
make the
any
shift.
longer.
Doesn't
Which
want to
means
give
the
up.
client will
Maybe
tell
that's
you,
what
I
you're
can't
doing.
get the old
Which is
picture
okay.
back.
We're
It's
not
just
forcing
not there.
anybody
All I
to
see
do
is
anything
the
they don't
picture.
want to do.
Then you know
But
you're
don't
right.
proceed
How many times do you
unless
need to do a switch?
the
I don't know,
answer
5,
to the
7,
question,
21,
is it
50
all right for your unconscious
You
mind to
do
make this
it
change today and for
until
you
the
to be aware
client
of it
tells you,
consciously,
"I cannot
is
find
an
the
absolute
old picture.
congruent
It's not
and
there
sounding,
anymore."
yes, absolutely,
Then
I'm
it's
ready, I want to do it.
There is no guesswork.
Number 1 on
here.
page 27.
It's very simple.
Can you
Either
think
the
of
client
something
gets
that you
the
like,
present state back,
but wish
or
you did not?
they don't.
The client says yes,
When they
wait
don't,
there for the
you know
client
you're
to say
done.
yes. And you say
And once you're
good.
done, at
Ask,
number 11 it says
what is it?
best and future pace.
The client tells you. And here is the question.
Now, I think it would be a good
Underline
idea
it, put it
for
in,
us to
like,
simply
highlight
go through
it,
and experience
and
how
remember
the
this
switch pattern is
question.
done. And so once again, I'm going to
As
call
you
on Lori
think about
and
how
ask her
much
to
you
be the
like that
demonstration subject.
food
Obviously, this
or
is not a
drink.
real setting,
Do
but I want
you
you to see how
have a
quickly
picture?
this can go.
Notice the
I want
words.
you to see how quickly
I
that
didn't
you
say, can you
move
make a
in the
picture?
process of
Can you
doing
remember a picture?
submodalities,
Make a picture,
swish pattern.
get a picture.
And so
No.
the first thing we want to ask Lori
I asked, do you
is,
have a picture?
when
Because we
we're about to
want
elicit a
the
present state
picture
of
that the
behavior, is it a
client
present state or
already
behavior that
has.
you want to change?
It's a state.
The picture
wanna
that
change the
represents
Okay, so
how
let's define
much
the state.
they like that
what
food.
state is it that you'd like to change?
I cannot stress this issue
When
enough.
people look at me in a certain way,
If you
I
do
get
it
really
correctly, it
uncomfortable.
will succeed.
So when people
So
look at
we
you a
want
certain way,
it to
you're
be
gonna go,
successful.
Okay, that's the present state.
The
And then
moment
what
the
would you like
client
to do
gives you
instead?
the answer,
like
yes,
to
I
feel
have a picture,
very
you
loving
take your
and joyous
submodalities
inside.
checklist on page
Okay,
29 and
so
then list
rather than being uncomfortable,
all the
when
submodalities.
people look at you,
Very
you'd rather
fast,
feel
the way
loving
you
and
saw Ted
joyous
demonstrating
inside.
it.
Right.
Okay, good. So
Number 2.
here's the question then. The
Can you
first
think of
question
something which is similar,
how do you know
but
it's
which you
time
absolutely
to feel
dislike?
uncomfortable?
For example,
When you
ice
think
cream
of that,
and
do you
yogurt.
have a
They're
picture?
similar, but
Yes.
So someone's looking
the client
at you,
says, yes, I
and
can
you
think
feel
of something
uncomfortable,
similar.
Right.
Then you say, good.
And you can-
What
you
is
can-
it?
you have
The
a picture.
client tells you.
Right. I get a picture.
And then
of it.
again, underline the next
So
question.
let's leave that picture. Let's put it
As
aside.
you
I'd like you to
think
clear
of
the
how
screen.
much you dislike that,
Good. Now,
do you have a
what would you like
picture?
to do instead when you want to feel loving and joyous inside?
Then you
so
elicit
when
the
you think of
submodalities.
that feeling loving and
Now,
joyous
it
inside,
is-
do you have a picture?
Yes, I do.
A good idea,
Now, as you look
and
at that
probably
picture, can you step right
easier
into
to
that
get
picture?
this
'Cause I'd like
technique
to
down,
adjust it to make it the
if
most
the
intense that we
location of the
possibly
two
can.
pictures is different.
Okay.
Meaning
So
a
step right
picture is
into that
right in
picture,
front,
looking
the
through
other
your
one
own
is up right or
And,
left down, or
let's
but
go
the
down our
locations are
submodalities
different.
checklist and pick
Very
a few
important.
of these just to see if we can make it more intense.
Does it mean that it won't succeed
can
if the
you move it a little
locations
bit
are
closer?
kind of similar?
Yes.
No,
make
it doesn't
more
mean
in a
that.
positive
But
feeling for you?
your rate of success will increase
And,
if the
can we turn up the
locations
brightness? Does
are
that help at all?
different.
Yes, it does.
Make it a little
Then
brighter.
at number 3 it says change
And
the
then make it a little
submodalities
more
of picture
focused.
number 1
Let's
into
make it a little
submodalities of
focused.
picture number 2.
That's good.
And then
Does
lock
that
it in
help you?
place. You say, how do you lock it in place? You
And
just
if
say,
we,
you know the
actually,
sound the
by
Tupperware
changing the
makes when it
location, by
seals,
moving it
just
up
like
a little
that,
bit, will that make
lock it
even
right in there.
better?
Well, I like it
Good.
more.
The client
in
does
towards
that.
my body and hold
Then
it
you
in
break
a
state.
lot.
Great. So move
Talk
it in
about
towards your
something
body and
else
make it
for a
little more
moment.
pulsating.
How's the weather outside? Nice
Now what I'd
pullover.
like you to do is
How's it
I'd like you
going?
to step
Do you
out
enjoy
of the picture
this?
so you see your body in the picture.
Anything. Change the subject, in other words. Briefly,
Now,
for 10, 15,
let's
30
take
seconds.
that
Yeah.
picture and shrink it
Then
down
you
so
go
it
to number
becomes
5
small
and you
dark in
say,
the lower left-hand corner.
now, what about the thing that you used to like?
Now let's take the
The
old picture
client
and bring
thinks
it up
of
on
the
the
things
screen.
they used to like,
Make sure you're
and
looking through your
you
own
should
eyes.
see
Okay.
by calibration with your
And
sensory
let's have a new
acuity
picture in front of the
that
old
the
picture.
client's
So let's have
reaction
the
to
new
that
picture
picture
in
is
front of you and
different.
make sure you see your
And
body
ask,
in the small
how's
dark
it
picture in
different?
the lower left-hand corner.
Number 5 was the test, and now
Now
we
in
move
just
to
a moment,
number
I'm going to
6,
have
which
the
is
picture
future
explode
pace.
big and bright and have it explode
Imagine
out
a
so the
time in the
covers up the old
future
picture while the old
when
picture
you might be
shrinks down and
tempted to
becomes
eat
small
that
and dark
again.
in the lower left-hand corner.
Or,
and when you
of
do
course,
it, not
if you
yet.
work on a
When
drink,
you do,
you
I
say,
want you to
drink
do as
that
quickly
again.
as whoosh.
And what
Okay, you ready?
happens
Ready.
now?
Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Whoosh.
Track 8, drivers and universals.
Okay. Now clear the
Now
screen.
that we have gone through the
Now let's
like to
bring the old
dislike or
picture
mapping
back. We have
across
the new picture in
script,
front.
let's
And tell me when you're ready.
briefly
And then have it explode
backtrack
big and bright. Here we go.
and
1,
talk about 2
2,
issues
3.
that
Whoosh.
you have heard in the demonstration
Okay, clear
Ted
the
did.
screen.
All right.
And are those
Let's have
things
the old
that make
picture
the
and back, new
difference
picture in front.
between a successful mapping across?
And
not.
here we go. 1, 2, 3.
In fact, they are so important and make a difference, again, in all
And then go ahead
submodalities
and clear the
techniques.
screen. Now, as we do this more and more, it may be harder and harder for you to get the old picture
Track
back.
number 8, drivers
Right.
and
And
universals.
actually, they're kind of like mixed into each other right now.
Good. So
We've
let's
seen
do it one more
the
time. Let's have the old
drivers
picture in
we
front.
can find
Let's
by
have the old picture
contrastive
behind, new
analysis.
picture in
We
front.
look what's different between 2 sets of
Ready?
pictures.
Okay,
Once
here
we
we
elicit
go.
the submodalities, we just
1, 2,
compare them.
3,
We look, well, okay, what is the location? By the way, location
the screen.
is probably one of
Okay,
the
now,
most
when you
important
think of
drivers.
when you think
in the
of that
top
old situation
preference,
where someone looks at you funny, how do you
location
feel?
is at number 1. If the location is
I get a
different,
really big feeling of that.
even slightly
tingling,
different, but even more if it's
sunny,
widely
warm
different,
feeling inside.
then you are ensured
Joyous
that
feeling.
location
That's
is
good.
the driver.
That's very good. Excellent. Okay.
Aside
thank you,
from
Laura. Thank you
location,
very much.
associated,
okay, so that's,
dissociated,
that's essentially.
and
Oh, well, let me ask
distance
you one
could
more
also
question
be
because that was a
drivers.
test. But now,
Does
sometime
that
in
mean
the
that
future,
other
what happens if somebody
submodalities
looks at
couldn't
you
be
funny? Can you imagine a
drivers?
time in the
No, it
future
doesn't mean
which,
that.
maybe if it
But
happened
in
the past
terms
and you
of
felt funny.
percentage
Imagine
of
sometime in the future,
people,
go out in the future,
so
do a
percentual
test.
wise,
in
Location
the future,
is
somebody
a
else
driver for upwards of 90%
How do you
of the
feel?
people. Now let me say something about drivers.
I feel good.
Drivers
very
are
bubbly,
mostly
and I'm
visual.
smiling and laughing with them.
I'm not knocking down
That's
people
excellent.
who are
Okay, thanks, Lynn.
kinesthetic.
All right, excellent. So
It doesn't
that's
mean
how to do a
that
submodality
if
switch
you are
pattern.
kinesthetic as the preferred
You
modality,
simply get the old picture, the new
your
picture,
drivers
and you exchange the two. What does it say
necessarily
to the
kinesthetic.
unconscious mind? It
And I
says to the
wanna
unconscious mind, okay, instead of doing
quote here
this, do
Dr.
this.
Milton Erickson. Dr. Milton Erickson said at some point that kinesthetic,
There are two
as
more
in
techniques
kinesthetic
we're going to
representational
cover.
system,
And one of them
is a
called
derived
VK
representational system
Both of them are
that
dissociative
comes off a
techniques.
visual
Let's talk about this one
or an
first.
auditory. This is a very important
For
quote,
example, I wondered if
because
you
what
could
it
remember
tells
something.
us
Everything
is
needs to
that
get always if
drivers
you're driving a
are
car.
mostly in the visual category or
Let's see if
auditory
you can remember
category.
a time where you
So,
were actually quite motivated.
which also
We'll go
tells
into
us
this a little earlier.
that if
we
we
can think
change
at the same time, it's
the
okay.
drivers and
Remember
the
the time
visual,
when you were totally
all the
motivated,
other
but
submodalities,
kept
including
really
the rest
good.
of the visual
Go
and
back
the
in
auditory
your
and
body
the
all the time
kinesthetic,
and
will
see what you
change
saw and hear what you
together
heard
with the
and
driver,
feel that
will
feeling
change
of being
into the other
totally
set of
motivated when
submodalities.
you were ready to go for it.
And we are on slide number
And you
52.
need to feel it, because if you
We're
don't,
still on
you
page
don't bother
9
to do it.
of the slide section.
So you need to get totally back into that moment.
The next thing
Remember
that
we
really
said,
makes
don't see
submodalities
yourself.
work
If you see yourself,
is
you're
the
not gonna feel
elicitation of
anything.
universals.
So get in
So
your
when you
body
work with
at the time,
someone
in
in
that
shifting
memory.
their experience, the question is,
Inside
what are you
your
going
own
to
body,
utilize
look through your
to
own
make
eyes,
that
and
shift
feel that feeling
really
you were
easy
quite
to do?
going for it.
In what
Quite
manner or what
excited
direction
about
are
it
we
and
going to shift
totally
that
motivated
experience?
and feel that
And here is
feeling,
something
and it
very
feels
interesting.
really great.
If
That's
you
what you need to
take
do.
and connect a set of submodalities distinctions, which is kind of
Now
blah,
once you got it,
to
I
another
want
set
you
of
to feel that
submodalities,
feeling.
you're going to
inside
get a
your whole
blah
body.
result. So what do I
Just
mean by that?
notice
Let's see.
That whole feeling.
Instead of using a powerful set of submodalities that will
notice that
be
you can
full of
strongly feel the
meaning
feelings
for
of
the
motivation.
client, you would do something bland,
Good.
something that doesn't
Now
mean
what I'd
any,
like you
any
to do
much
is
for
to step
anything
out of your
important
body.
for the client.
Leave your
And then
body where it
exactly
is.
that's the type of result
and
you will
step
get.
out of your body and look
You
at the
want
picture
to hook up
and
the
see
final
your
result
body
to
in
a
that
something that's very powerful.
Same picture.
A set of submodalities that's powerful.
Same memory.
Therefore,
same picture. Don't take a picture,
universals
leave it like that.
are
Just step out of your body.
extremely good for this purpose.
And now
what is a
see your
universal?
body in the
This is another piece of jargon we need to
and
define.
notice something very
A
interesting.
universal experience is generally a
Feeling of
generalized
motivation that you
experience.
felt 1 moment ago.
Because the person,
Not there anymore.
when he hears this, immediately can connect to that.
Well, it's in the picture.
The person
But
not
you are
only
not
that
in the
connects
picture, so
to it,
step
but
out,
it also
right?
has a lot of meaning.
So
When
you
we
see,
evoke a
this
universal
proves- this is a
experience
very
from the
simple technique.
person,
How-
they could even connect with
Step
that
out of
even
the
if they personally
So
didn't have
it
one.
takes no time. However, do you see the utility of this?
Here is an
Now imagine
example
you
of
feel
the
bad about something,
universal
and you're totally
experience,
associated in your body.
which
All you have to
probably
do
everybody
is
can
step
connect
out of your
with.
body, and that feeling.
Every
that you
person
got
on this planet has a belief
How
that
useful
used to
is
be
that?
true but is no longer true.
extremely useful.
So everybody has a belief that
That's a
used to
very
be true
simple
but is
technique.
no
It's called
longer true.
VK dissociation.
For example, when you were 13 years
and
old,
finally,
you
we're
believed-
going to talk about perception.
listen to the
positions.
language again.
Perception
I
positions
am
involve,
13
as I said 1
years
moment
old.
ago, 3 positions. One is you.
But where is the belief I
Position number
am
1?
13 years old?
Position number 2
now
is position of a person
is
you
no
are
longer
having a
true
conflict
unless
with.
you stayed 13,
a
which is
position that
kind of hard to
is
do.
another
Anyway,
person
so the belief
involved
I
with
am
you in a
13 years
situation.
old used to be
And
true.
position number 3,
However,
is
it's
a
no longer
neutral
true.
person that doesn't.
So
is
everybody
not
has a
involved
belief
in a
like
conflict
this.
at all,
It's a universal
but observes
experience.
and is able to see
Another
both
universal
positions.
experience is the
able
sun
to
is
see
coming up
you,
tomorrow.
Is it able to see
Not
the other
necessarily that
person?
we'll see it. Maybe it's a
from
cloudy
an
day.
absolutely,
But the
totally
sun is coming up
objective
tomorrow.
and neutral point of view.
That's another universal belief.
Good.
And here is a good one.
So-
the stoplight and the go light.
Let's
So
remember a time
you're driving
when you had a
or you're
situation
walking.
like this.
And,
Maybe
or
there
you're
is
in a
person
bus,
in
doesn't
your life
matter.
with whom
And the
You have
traffic
some sort
light
of a
in
conflict.
front turns yellow and then turns
some sort
red.
of a disagreement.
What
It
do you
doesn't
do?
have to be big. Could be
You
something
stop.
small. Some sort of a disagreement.
Stop all the time? Yep,
Okay.
you stop. It's red.
Got it?
At least you should stop, even
Good.
if it's 2 a.m.
Now, as you remember that time, make sure
But then you're waiting at a
step in
traffic
your
light
body and
and the
be
light turns green. What do you
inside
do?
your body,
You
looking
go.
through your own eyes.
Whether you are
And
pedestrian,
notice
crossing the
how you
road,
feel
or
about
whether
that.
you're driving a car, you just go.
You
It's
can
green.
even say out loud in words because
Pretty much everybody who has experienced traffic
lights,
lights
you can do it on your own.
has
and
say
say out loud. I feel
is
this
able
way.
to refer to
I notice this. It's
go
important
light,
to
stop
make
light,
sure
set
that
terminologies.
you are
Which
uttering
means
also
that if we elicit
some,
the submodalities,
kinesthetic
of if no
words,
longer
meaning
true, or the sun's
express
coming up tomorrow,
for yourself,
or the go light,
or make a
the green
note
light,
if you
go
want
light, and
mentally
the traffic
of
light,
how you
we're
feel
going to
about
end
that
up with a
thing.
very
Or
powerful
maybe
set
you're
of
irritated, maybe
submodalities.
you're frustrated,
Because
maybe
everybody,
whatever, yeah?
it's a generalized
But make sure you make a
experience.
mental
It's
note
a
about it.
universal. So therefore,
And take your
if
time
we
and-
do
and-
this,
and
we're going to end
do
up
a-
with a very powerful set of
express very
submodalities,
clearly
which we can use
how you
later
feel
on
about that. Without
for our
blame,
purposes,
without
for
your
our
doing this
techniques.
and
So
just
together
express how
with
you feel.
drivers, it's very important to
Good.
relay as much
Once
as
you've
you
done
can
that,
on universals.
step out of your
These
body.
two issues will make a
Leave your
difference
body where it is
in your success
and
with
step into
submodalities.
the other person's body, looking back
For any one
at
of the
you.
examples that I gave you, the moment they say yes,
Imagine
I
you are becoming
have the
other
belief
person.
that the sun is coming
You're
up
inside
tomorrow.
them. By the way, this
Your
is
next
inside your
question
mind,
would
but
be,
you're
of
not
course,
really becoming
when you think of the sun coming up
But
tomorrow,
inside your mind's
do you
eye,
have a picture?
you're inside
And
your
then,
body
of course,
looking
this
back
is
at
the
you.
way you're going to
And
use
what I'd
the
like you to do
submodalities.
is to describe
Because
the
the
situation
client
from their
absolutely believes
perspective,
it's true.
using the first.
So that's very
Using the
powerful.
first person.
It's the client's
So you will
absolutely
say,
certain.
"I
It has a
look
certain
back
amount of
at
certainty that goes with that
Adriana,
picture.
if I was doing this process.
And so,
I look back at
if we
Adriana
can
and
get
I
that
see
set
her this
of
way, and she makes me
submodalities
feel,
where we
and then I
have
would say
that
what I
absolute
feel in
certainty
that conflict.
that it will
Does that
happen,
make sense?
for the
describe
person,
the
this will
conflict
create
this
a
time
very
from the
powerful
other
set of
person's point of view,
submodalities
being inside your
with
body, looking
an
through
enormous
your
amount
eyes
of
back at
power
you.
into it. Let's
Take
talk
your time
about
with this
again
one.
about the go light. Say whatever you need to say. If the light
Once
turns
you're done
green
with that, step
and it's
outside.
safe, you go.
Of this person's
Now, if
body.
you elicit a set of
And now
submodalities
move
of this
into the third
go
position.
light experience,
And the third position is
you
the
end
neutral
up with a
observer
very
position.
motivating,
Imagine
let's go,
a
let's
fly
go,
on the
it's
wall
green, move.
that is able to see
Set of
Both of
submodalities
you,
that you can utilize
you on one
for
side,
anything
the other
else.
person on the other
Let's
side,
say
and observing in a
that
totally neutral
at
manner
work,
the conflict.
somebody is not
Now,
is not really
I want you to
motivated, doesn't get
step
going with a
into
project.
this person's
Maybe it's
neutral
you.
position,
Maybe it's something around the
neutral
house that you know you
person's
should
body.
do, but you don't feel like
looking through their own
doing.
eyes,
I'm not really motivated
and
to
you
do
see
that.
you, and you see the other person you're having. a
What
conflict.
you can do
And I want you to
is to
describe the
elicit the
conflict
set
from
of
this person's
submodalities
point
of the go light, and then change the
You do it in the
submodalities
first
of that project
part,
that
first
you
person.
need to do, but
I see this,
you're not really
I see that.
going on it. That set of submodalities
Once you're done with that,
into
take
the
your time again.
submodalities of the green light.
And once you're done,
And all
with
of a
it,
sudden, the project
step outside
that
of
the
the
project
third
that wasn't
position.
moving before,
and go back
all of a
in
sudden it
position
gets the
number one,
oomph and the
in
power
position
of the
that
green
is
light,
you,
go light,
in your body, fully
and you're going to
associated.
find yourself getting going
You
with
will
it
be
and
surprised
finishing
what you
it
find out,
rather
because
quickly and
here is the
without
best
feeling
thing.
bad about it.
If you've done the
So you
process
see the
correctly,
utilization of
you will
universals
feel
could come in very
completely
handy.
differently about this conflict. And you will
Aside
get
from
lots of
drivers and
important
universals, there is
by
one more
noticing
thing, one more
two other
thing
positions,
that makes submodalities work
except
like a
from
charm.
yours.
And it doesn't need a
We usually
slide,
are stuck on
it
our
doesn't
own
need full
point of view.
explanation. We
When
already
we
touched
are able
upon
to
it.
change our point
But
of
the
view.
third
and notice
thing, the
that
third element that makes
other possibilities
submodalities
are there.
really, really,
and
really
we don't
work
have the
is
full
speed.
picture and the whole
Remember,
truth.
you really got to do
All
those
of a sudden,
submodalities fast.
that serves us in
When
terms of
Dad did the
learnings, and we
demonstration,
can
you noticed that
interact
he did it very,
much
very
better.
quickly.
And,
And
in
in
a positive
doing that,
manner with the person with whom we
He
used
kept
to
the
have that.
client moving forward.
We're at the end of
So I think the next thing that we
submodalities.
want to do,
This is
we
the
want to
completion of
demonstrate the
program
process of
number 6.
contrastive
Thank you for
analysis
listening.
and
We'll get
mapping
into
across.
language when we start program.
Okay, so we want to thank Lori for joining us once again.
Thank you.
And what we're going to do is we're actually going to do the submodalities like to dislike script. But I'm going to take a few moments to elicit the submodalities and also to talk to you as you listen to the tapes so you'll notice exactly what I'm doing. And the first thing I need to do is I actually need to do what's called contrastive analysis. So let's find out what Lori likes that she'd like to dislike. What do you like that you want to dislike?
Chocolate.
Okay, you want to dislike chocolate. So I'm going to take page 29 and right over number 1 on page 29, I'm going to write chocolate. And is there something which you